Hello, everyone. Welcome to another scintillating session from the Found by Lottie team. In today's webinar, we will be looking at care collaborations and how integrations can improve a care journey from start to finish. This webinar is being recorded, so if you are unable to attend, fear not. There's going to be a recording waiting for you afterwards. You can probably see my cat just there in the background. I hope you're enjoying that. Something special for you all. We will have also a designated Q&A session at the end. So the last 15 minutes or so will be just dedicated to questions and answers, hopefully. So please, at any time during the webinar, please ask a question and we'll be happy to answer it. There's a little tab, Q&A tab. Please go for it. And so let's dig a little deeper into what this webinar is about today. So we live in a world where communication has never been easier. Where there's a new piece of software to check every single box of the care journey. And yet synchronizing all those systems and collaborating on something that actually helps those looking for care is still very hard to attain. And I have a little fact to back this up. So this is quite a well-known fact as well. So 65% of all inquiries are missed or not followed up with in an appropriate time. How is that still possible today with all the technology we have available? We know how effective system integrations can be, but how do we make them more efficient? So in this webinar today, we won't just be exploring the power of integrations, but we'll also look into how we can deliver that perfect care journey and how we can turn those pesky prospects into full-fledged and happy families, which is always the end goal. It's always looking for those care seekers. As I said before, I'm very, very happy to introduce to you my guest today. So first, I'd like to introduce you to Lee Gilbert. Hi, Lee. Lee is a mission-driven storyteller and is passionate about the social care and mental health scene. As Chief Marketing Officer at Nourish Care, she is responsible for communicating the value and impact of technology on the sector. She has 25 years experience in various marketing and business leadership roles, the last of which have been in social impact businesses. Welcome, Lee. Really nice to have you.
Afternoon, everyone, and really great to be here, Robin.
Nice. And my second guest is Chris Donnelly. So before Lottie and Found, Chris founded and was CEO of Verb Brands, a company he grew into one of the world's most recognized luxury digital agencies. Chris has helped hundreds of brands digitalize and implement effective CRM software solutions, and the care industry is now no different. Now he's on a mission to elevate later life for everyone by reinvigorating the social care scene. Welcome, Chris.
Thanks, Rob. That introduction gets longer every time.
Yeah, so what I usually like to do is just add an extra line, add a little bit of history, a little bit of context to you. I think that's important.
None of it's needed.
You know, in a year's time, Chris, that introduction will be most of the webinar, and there won't be any time to even for you to say hello. But yeah, I forgot to mention I'm Robin. So who am I? I'm just your host, and luckily not an expert today. So I'll just be guiding you throughout. But hi. So let's get into it. Chris, I was wondering if you could just begin by just describing what a typical integrated care journey looks like. What are the key integrations people would see?
Well, I think the first thing to talk about is kind of that stat you said earlier, which whenever anyone does any mystery shopping or they do any surveys or trying to get a sense of how care organizations respond to care seekers, you get a stat not too dissimilar to that, which is that so many inquiries are passed over. And I think that there's a lot to be said here that the care sector in general needs more support, needs more money, needs more funding, needs more staff. These things are all very true. But I think at the baseline, I suppose when we first entered the sector, one of the things we noticed first and foremost, and again, my background was I did a lot of hospitality marketing. So I implemented systems in hospitality for a very long time. And one of the first things I noticed is that there were very few systems, and that none of the systems spoke to each other, and that none of the companies who owned the systems wanted to speak to each other as if it was sort of competitive. And so I think that our view very quickly was, well, if someone ever makes an inquiry, then that inquiry should be the beginning of the journey for that care seeker with that organization, and should therefore not require that individual to have to enter their details 5 or 6 more times, have to be asked the same question loads of times. I have a lot of friends in the care sector now who own care homes and so forth. And our pet peeve is that like care seekers get asked their family name or, you know, the same piece of information at a really emotional and quite triggering time in their life, that they keep getting asked, you know, what's mum's full name, or what's the condition, or, you know, these basic questions. And so from my side, I think a typical journey might not be the right question. Typical journeys tend to be quite bad. A good journey might be that from the moment someone inquires, their profile is created, and then obviously, like, we have an amazing relationship with Nourish, and so we have an integration already. So our information is passed into Nourish. It just means that from the moment they inquire, they place a call, they give details, they're asked more details. All of that is building a profile, and then because of our relationship with Nourish, our system automatically creates a profile within Nourish, and then they continue their journey of, you know, adding additional information to that profile. And then obviously, you know, Lee will talk more about this, but then their business is so brilliant in the sense that they then have lots of integrations with other partners that mean that that care seeker isn't continuously pushed to answer the same question. And I think that when you think about if you lose information in this sense, you're kind of losing medical information. And so continuity is absolutely key. And then I think just the other thing I would say is, obviously what we do is we do a lot of like marketing and CRM and work. And I suppose that means that you want integrations with things like marketplaces like Lottie or like carehome.co.uk or Google Ads or Facebook or, you know, any of those types of tools, because you don't want to have to go to lots of different places to get this information. You just want to log into one dashboard and have it all there. And so, yeah, I think that's the sort of baseline that people should be looking at. And then the piece that we've been kind of running at 100 miles an hour this year is making sure that your CRM and occupancy platform is connected to finance. So making sure that, again, the teams within the homes don't have to recreate all of this documentation or customer profiles from scratch. The minute someone moves into the home, it's recognized in the system and automatically will create their billing profile. So that's just a baseline.
Yeah, so like the sense I'm getting is that the power of integrations actually lies in the idea that it's actually frictionless. It's actually removing a bit of that you know, that sort of documentation at the top, so that the care seeker can actually move through with a complete profile, all documentation covered, without having to do the rigmarole of constantly inputting the same information. That's where the power lies.
Absolutely. And I think a good analogy I'd always give is like in a 5-star white glove hotel, you would want them to ask you questions up front before you arrive and never again.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's your allergies or preferences or, you know, temperature, I don't know how these places work, but like all the key information that you would want to have known, asked once, and then continuity is guaranteed. And I kind of think that's the same here. This is, you know, choosing a care solution, whether a home or a home care provider, is the biggest decision you'll make in your life.
Yeah.
You can make on behalf of someone else, you know, often.
Yeah. That's so true. And Lee, do you have an example of a time when a piece of integration has made that delivery of care easier? Is there like a certain example in your head where you go, oh, as soon as that happened, that really opened the floodgates and made things so much more frictionless and efficient?
I think there's two parts to this. I mean, what you've got here is the idea of frictionless is obviously really key, but I go back here that this isn't really about a single integration or a single step in that journey. We're talking here about a piece of an experience that people have at a very emotional time for them. And of course, particularly when families are involved, sometimes they can feel quite upset or guilty or frustrated or whatever the emotion might be that's behind their life at the time where they're needing to put their mother, their father, or their relative into some form of care. That emotion is in the back of their mind. And I think just pinning this whole thing down to one piece of integration is is pretty hard, because it is about having an ecosystem of integrations that work seamlessly. And I think it was a great point that was mentioned a while ago by Chris about having companies that want to work together to make this happen. And it's such an important piece here. And Nourish prides itself on its partnership program. And our partnership program is extremely well run. We vet providers, we vet those that we work with, and we invest in those integrations and work in a strong partnership. So and Found by Lottie is a key example of that, and it's the beginning of that journey. And obviously, as that comes through into Nourish and it surfaces the data into Nourish, it really helps that onboarding process, so that the care facility, whether that be home care or whether that be the care home, is not having to ask those same questions that have already been provided earlier on. And that really is what integration should be about. And I think if we are doing that and we are causing unnecessary stress by asking things more than once as a whole ecosystem of that journey, then all that's doing is magnifying the emotional state that the family member or others that may be in at that particular time. So, we integrate with a menu of partners from CRM to EMR to pain assessment to family communication, audit platforms. All of those things are absolutely vital to allow us to deliver and power our customers to deliver really great care. And when you look at trying to pin it down to one single integration, I think it's really tough to do that, because it is about literally every link in that chain working well, and that's what gives that great experience. And I always come back to that care journeys are essentially, they're an experience, and you want that experience to be as positive as possible. And there are multiple partners and multiple kinds of integrations that make that journey to come together. And the only way that can happen is, yes, by having it being frictionless, but the only way that can happen is by having partners such as Lottie that really do want to work in true partnership.
Yeah.
And both parties investing deeply in that integration, so that we can continue to improve and frankly to surface data from one system to another. Because one of the other issues that you see with integrations, and this is something you see a lot in the care sector, is there are integrations and there are integrations, right? There are some that do integrations that surface very little data into other systems, but actually you could still claim there's an integration.
Yeah.
And I think for an integration to be truly valuable, to truly make a difference, it is about surfacing whether there's a need for a two-way sync, but surfacing the data that's valuable at the right time, and nudging those individuals that are interacting in their experience with family members or those drawing on care, so that they feel valued and that they are really getting that 5-star experience that we all want to give.
Yeah. And I love the idea of that ecosystem. I love the idea of, does it take a village to deliver great care? It probably does. It does in essence. Something I found really interesting is that you have all these sort of nodes and links that connect everyone throughout this care journey. If one of those breaks down, then what effect does that have for yourself, or what does that have on the care seeker themselves? What impact does that have on their care journey?
I think there's two parts to it. I alluded to it a little bit a moment ago. There's definitely a human. They all fall into human impact, right? So if integrations, which are forms of technology, break down, the consequence is there is a human impact, and that sits at the core of everything. And one of the driving ethos behind Nourish is a strong focus on the person, but it's also a strong focus on that human experience of care, and providing ways to enable that to be better and to continuously improve that over time. So it is about the human impact on the person being supported, but also when it breaks down, to your point, there is the human impact on the teams involved.
Mm.
So if something breaks down in that process, it only creates confusion or frustration within care teams that are trying their best themselves to deliver the care. And if that whole care journey is breaking down, then it's not just the person that's the recipient and the person being supported that is impacted, but those people that genuinely want to give great care feel inside deeply the pain that something not working is happening on the individual that's in front of them or the person that they're really trying to help. So I think it is about that human factor. And I come back to the term frustration, and the negative emotion that sits behind all of this is when this works, frustration's not present. When it breaks down, that's when frustration and some of that emotion really starts to show up. So a benchmark of a truly powerful integration, a benchmark of a truly great care journey is the absence of frustration and the presence of happiness and that real person-centered human delivery that just completely changes the experience of care.
Yeah, and that ease to alleviate that burden, to take away that sort of one of the most difficult choices in your life and alleviate that for a moment, so that you can focus on what matters most, getting the care that your loved one needs. Chris, if I want to deliver a better care journey, where should I start? How should I begin to improve my care journey?
Well, I think first things first. As Lee said, I mean, you're aiming at an outcome that's emotional more than anything. You're aiming at someone having a effective and efficient journey that results in them having a pleasant and nice experience for their family member. And so I think that it can't be solved with technology. It never will be. It's not just a technological problem. So a lot of the time that I talk to organizations, I'm talking about there's all this stuff that we can do with tech, which is kind of like making your team's life easier in what we already do. But we also need to understand that like every single inquiry that comes in is a person. It's a journey. We need to make sure that it's recorded perfectly so that that person has a pleasant and efficient journey. And so I think that when I talk to people about where things are dropping off, a really obvious one is if you set up your integrations properly between systems. Take, for example, something like a lot of care homes get a lot of inquiries from things like Lottie or carehome.co.uk or other platforms. That one single integration there means that all of those inquiries automatically appear in the CRM, perfectly ordered and perfectly filled in with all the relevant details. On the Lottie ones, obviously, they come in with the pre-recorded phone call. And so you're looking at an inquiry, you've got all the information, you know where it's from, you know how the marketing worked to get it there, you know all the details that person's given, you can listen to the phone call. So you've got all of that, really clear information. And so that alone, when we put that in place for all the care homes, they automatically see a significant increase in the amount of inquiries, but also the amount of conversions, just simply because they've got all the inquiries for the first time ever. The other thing is just making sure that the team have a really easy entry point to begin an inquiry. So again, a lot of the homes that we went into at the start were doing like writing down inquiries and then annotating them later into a system or putting them into a spreadsheet. Whereas if you can just say like, here's a really easy entry point for your team, put in the key information, then that begins the journey. And then there's lots of prompts within the system to make sure that that customer profile is then improved. And so I think that those are the two main points, which is someone calling in. And again, like for us, this was driven by my brother and I being quite involved in putting my grandpa originally, and then my grandma into a care home, and never getting a call back, which was like a remarkable thing.
Right.
When fundamentally you're spending something like 75 to 100,000 pounds a year on care for someone, not receiving a phone call back, you're like, wow. And then when you do call back, they go, we didn't even know you called. And so a lot of the time you're trying to just make people's lives at work easier. So I think those are the two main pieces. And to be honest, a lot of that, whether it's Found or other systems, can be solved by very well-established technology. It's nothing particularly new. the nice thing that happens next with tech is that, for example, our system will prompt you to tell you what you need to do next. It will suggest the next points. And the profile is not just a CRM. It can hold documents. It can send information to Nourish. You just want to make it easy so that so for the family, it's effortless. Yeah.
Less effort, essentially. And I think that was really interesting, because I can already see the connection between that. Like, just in your personal story of trying to find care for your grandparents, like, that frustration's palpable, not getting that inquiry call back on. And then for the home themselves, they must be pulling their hair out going, why aren't we following up on these inquiries? Because they're missing out on delivering great care. They're delivering, somewhat delayed care. That's not good. So already I can see that sort of crossover between the human element and the sort of more functional side. Lee, I'll ask you a similar question. If I wanted to improve the efficiency of my care journey today, what would be your top tip for me?
I would always fall onto the core pillar that sits behind what drives Nourish forward, which is a strong focus on the person, as I mentioned earlier on. When that's lost, there's a huge missed opportunity for allowing people to understand their needs and to meet their dreams that they have still to unfulfilled, that they want to continue to pursuing. Because just because someone's going into care doesn't mean that those things stop. So if we're able to improve the efficiency of a care journey by, yes, keeping a strong focus on the person, but making sure that we're really tracking those outcomes and understanding what those opportunities are to help people continue to seek out and find their dreams and to challenge themselves as they move forward in life. I think that's the differences you make. This week, the last couple of weeks, I've been spending a lot of time in our customers' care homes, and one of the great things that happens is how that whole onboarding journey happens when someone comes into a home, and the timing and the deft touch that it takes to find those dreams that people have. It isn't about systemizing that, okay, day one, we must cover and tick all of these boxes and ask all of these questions just because this is part of our onboarding journey. Sometimes technology is there. It has to be there as an enabler, not something that's forcing behavior. And it sits there as a prompt, and it sits there as something that needs to be done. But doing it with real human focus and going through those stages, sometimes taking an extra few days so that the person finds time to settle, so that you get them to respond more appropriately to their onboarding questions, so you can find out what they truly need and truly what their aspirations and dreams are for the rest of their life. Capturing that makes such a difference. And the downside, of course, or the opposite of doing that, is you rush it. And if you rush that in the journey in the beginning, just because you've got some questions to answer in that onboarding journey as they enter day one of their care, then they themselves can be flustered. They themselves can be confused, and they're not going to share with you some of the amazing things that they still have that they're aspiring to achieve and do. I met someone last week, a lady called Sylvia. She wants to be a lollipop lady again. Now, she used to do that 30 years ago. Now, if that question was asked on day one of them coming into that care service, it's almost certain that her head would have been filled of loads of other concerns and questions of coming into that care home on day one, and her family being around her and trying to settle her in. She would have never shared that lollipop story. But now the service knows that she wants to become a lollipop lady again, they're absolutely going to lean in to make that happen. And so it's really, really capturing that strong focus on the person, but not rushing it, using tech as an enabler and finding ways to make magic come alive.
Yeah, I absolutely love that story. We've got a couple of lollipop ladies near me because we live on the same street as the school, and I just think that's a hugely powerful thing. And the sense I'm getting is that we want, we talk about efficiency, but we don't want to be invasive. We don't want to actually push people to negative outcomes because of technology. So it has to be human implemented technology in the right way and using it in the like you said, a deft touch. I think that's just so important to delivering something really visceral and real. I love that. When it comes to conversions and turning that 65% upside down, where do we see most of the care seekers drop off within a care journey, Chris? Where have you noticed most?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to sort of address that first as like a marketing question, and then talk about it in the specifics of care. I think that if you think about how a typical care home or a care home organization markets itself, it will have, Facebook campaigns, Google campaigns, it will have an email newsletter, it will have local campaigns, it will have leaflets. I think that what care homes have been very bad at historically in marketing terms is tracking the success of their marketing. And so when you ask a care home, how much does it cost to acquire a qualified inquiry? They actually won't know the answer to that question, and they won't often be able to tie up the success of a local marketing campaign with how many inquiries came in off the back of it, or and the other platforms. And especially now that more and more is digital, there are more marketplaces, and so care homes are spending more on Facebook and Google and other platforms, and again, aren't quite sure where that money is going and what it's converting into. And so I think that first and foremost, again, and obviously I'm a co-founder of Lottie and Found, but I would say outside of just Found, there are countless systems that will allow a care home to automatically collect that marketing data. So you funnel your Facebook or Google and your offline campaigns with a QR code into a CRM, and quite easily can get yourself into a position where you understand that 60 to 70% of your inquiries are coming from one marketing source, which tends to be the case in marketing. You often get one or two that really work for you and the rest actually don't. So I think that a lot of people miss out on that, Robin, actually, which I think is a shame, because if you had more qualified leads, it would be easier to meet your targets and so forth from a marketing perspective. I think where people drop off on the journey, though, is actually more back to what Lee was saying, which is like, if you've got someone in the CRM and you've got a little bit of information about them, what you should do very early on is try and have a meeting with that person to fill out their profile, to make sure that you know everything about them, so that when you're talking to them, you're not having a scattergun conversation. You're having a very deep and meaningful conversation about how mum and dad like to spend their time, what they like to do, what their interests are, whether your home meets that, from an interest perspective. Because again, the feedback you get from people when they don't choose a home, they might click a feedback form. If you follow up with them, it's often a lack of personal touch. And so that's really hard to deliver as a big organization. But the more data and information you have on someone, the more you can be personalized. And so I feel like that's the stage that most people are dropping out, is not getting a really personalized service. And so, yeah, I think systems will really help with that, but also, having a standardized operating process within a home or an organization. So these are the questions we ask. This is how we deal with the next stage, and just making sure that everyone in that journey understands the importance of each step in that journey. Whereas and I can tell you all on this call, I'm in a relatively unique position in that I see all the phone calls that happen on Lottie. And so thousands of phone calls are happening on Lottie where we are directing people to care homes. I can genuinely see and listen to, so many calls where people are just not treating people the right way, not asking the right questions, not giving it the right amount of time. And one more tactical point, but the amount of phone calls and inquiries that happen post 6 p.m. or on the weekend that are completely lost is another point where I would say that without technology or automation, you're just not going to capture those easily, because you don't have the staff post 6 p.m. and on the weekend. And so there's just a huge drop off there.
Yeah, so there's an element of resource that you mentioned in there, but the personal touch element, I feel that's quite important. Do you feel that initial moment and talking to that family seeking care, that person seeking care, do you both think that is the sort of the key ingredient to sort of turn that number upside down, in the sense to actually approach each and every inquiry with the sort of personalization it deserves?
I just think, like, if we all just think about a situation now where you're calling in or walking into a home and you're putting your mum and dad into a home, and you see that the home is busy, everyone it's quite chaotic. You ask questions, you don't get perfect answers. You ask for a follow-up, it's not the right time. You start to think to yourself, well, if those basic things can't be met, how is the care going to be for my dad who has a particular need of, insulin injections twice a day or something like that? You want to put forward an image of, comfort, because you want people to feel comfort. And so I think the training is obviously critical, but I think that the systems allow people to be better at their jobs.
I think there might be a lot of care providers that go, well, we'd love to be able to do that, but we're just completely and utterly stretched. Like, well, what are they meant to do? Well, like all this sort of talk about integrations is great, but then if you haven't got the resource and the sort of to back it up, where do they begin to sort of hone in on like a sort of more efficient?
I think one of the things to really focusing with a care journey, particularly an onboarding journey from the beginning of seeking and making an inquiry and then beginning that process of onboarding into a care setting. It's not linear. It's not something that just happens as a sequence of change in real life. And so time is your friend, not your enemy, if you allow that to have an organic element to it. Quite frequently with a lot of processes, it does become a sequential chain of events. And that's when you're boxing yourself into trying to find out all the information you want at a given stage. But there's so much in that journey that can be organic. And if you think about it yourself, even when you go into, I think the example given earlier on of going into a hotel or making a hospitality inquiry, there are some things that we all do, no matter what part of life we're in, where we just don't share all of the information in the beginning, not because we don't want to, but just because it doesn't come to our mind. Now, if you then layer into that stress, emotion, frustration, and other things that are that pretty challenging time for everyone, it's inevitable that they're not going to share things that fit into a sequential tech-driven journey. Mm-hmm. So we have to allow some organic nature to that, which is why you have to, it's a mindset shift to allow time to be your friend, not your enemy, and allow some of those processes to have an organic nature to them and create interactions that mean that you are building that picture of the person up over a period of time, not trying to do it all within a constrained box of time that the process says you have to deliver it in. And one of the things that I've always been amazed by, particularly with people that are getting used to being particularly in a residential care home setting, they're adjusting so much in their life. Previously they've lived perhaps in their own home or with family, which has been much more of a familiar setting to them. Now they're in a completely different environment. So it takes them time to adjust. It takes them time to feel, okay, I'm okay with this. I feel happy with this surroundings. That then means that they will be more expressive about themselves and some of the things that they want to do. So just because we've got all of these processes in care, we also need to remember that it isn't about a process-driven environment. And we have to just allow things to come back from time to time and say, well, we can revisit that. There's no need to run through this at 100 miles an hour. In fact, most people drawing on care can't go through these processes at 100 miles an hour. They need time. They need some of that. So it's a paradigm shift from time being your enemy to time being your friend, really, and just allowing some of the process to be more organic than perhaps people initially think about it.
Yeah, it's hugely nuanced, isn't it? When you think about it, no care journey is the same. So why I think there's a danger of predicting the perfect care journey, isn't there? And saying it goes from A to B to C to all the way to Z, or whenever that care journey finishes. I think having room for organic elements within that is so powerful, because then you find that personalized touch that Chris was alluding to, and then you find that efficiency with it. And so therefore you have that sort of personalized interaction, and yet you're going at sort of a steadier pace, but with technology to back you up as an enabler, not as the driving force, which I feel is really a really important point to touch on. We've talked a lot about, what an efficient care journey might look like. It's that sort of mixture between technology and or organic sort of interaction. But it'd be great to discuss more of the human element behind it and why we are trying to deliver it. So, Lee, for you, what is the most important aspect of delivering an effective care journey?
I've touched on some of this already. Time, strong focus on the person is obviously the beginning of everything to deliver that, particularly when we are in that onboarding process and delivering that care from that point forward. But it is about time and giving time where needed, as I was speaking a moment ago. And it isn't about just trying to do everything on day one and allowing some more freedom on organic nature in there. But at the end of the day, the most important aspects of delivering an effective care journey is really thinking through who matters most and who is involved in that care journey. Because, of course, there are different people in an effective care journey. It's not just about the most important person is the person that's being supported, that's going through that care journey. But there are other people involved, which families obviously are a big part of an effective care journey. I think obviously there may well be their partner may or may not be in care. They may be having to put their partner themselves into care. So there may be their husband or their wife or their partner that's also involved, as much as their children and their other relatives. So I think it is about recognizing in that circle of care how we are dealing with that care journey with everyone involved, and not just the most important person, of course, which is the person receiving the care. And ultimately, the most important aspect as well is generating happiness. And so if we're looking at outcomes, it is about that. Yes, it's about it being smooth, and yes, it being frictionless. But when we think about it in those terms, that's quite a tech-driven set of a tech language. Ultimately, what we're wanting to do is, by having it frictionless, by having it transfer information and data from place to place, is just thinking about the emotional states that we're really trying to create for that circle of care, particularly the families and those that are drawing on care, and them feeling okay, and then feeling happy that they've made the right choice. Because a lot of the families that I speak to that have recently put their loved one into care is a lot of them have had a sense of guilt of needing to do that. And of course, if you're coming from that place, you want to be doing the best thing for your loved one, for your mother or father or whoever it may well be, because you need some help adjusting to that emotional state. So helping people through that whole process and dealing with their own roller coaster of emotions is such an important part of it. And it all really comes back to the emotion, the human aspect. But it's not just seeing it as a single person that's involved in that care journey. It's recognizing that there's quite often many more people involved than just the person that's coming into the care setting.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that paints a wonderful picture of just the sort of impact focusing on people and the people taking care of those, like maybe the unpaid caregivers that need help. And I think there's an important point here where, we're actually looking at what technology does versus what the human does in this entire journey. And actually what technology is doing is it's removing the sort of the time consuming bits, isn't it, Chris? It's removing that sort of, oh, you don't want to have to focus too much on the administrative side and connecting the dots yourself. Technology is connecting those dots for you and creating that profile that's rich. And it's allowing people to do what they do best and deliver great care for those people and families, isn't it? That's the point.
Yeah, and I think that's, I always think we talk about improving care every day. Like it's not, it's I have no right to sit here and say that to organizations. But the only thing we ever try and do is we try and model what the perfect, interaction looks like. We try and work backwards from that and think, how does technology enable, improve, support? How does it arm the workers to do the best jobs possible and to save them time? And that's all effectively we can ever do, which is, we're just trying to add a little bit of value to every stage to make sure that when someone is rushed, that they know the exact questions they're asking. It might be as simple as in the assessment stage, asking these questions and inputting them in the correct way. It might be as simple as when someone gets in touch, what are the key questions that you as an organization want to ask? Like, we're definitely not here to tell people how to do their jobs. I think what we're here to do is, which is why we spend a lot of time with our partners, is like, what would you want the system to do more? Like, how could the system improve to improve your day to day? Like, how can we save you time? And that's all we ever focus on, Robin. I mean, I think that we as a company want to integrate with anything and everything we can to help. And I think that I really like that Nourish and Found, in my opinion, are really leading the way and being super open and being like, let's integrate further, let's help more. Like, what can we do more of? Let's work with a partner home to build and improve the system. And I think that is desperately what the sector needs more of.
Yeah, and it goes all the way back. It goes full circle to what Lee was saying at the beginning, where, that partnership is the heart of delivering great care, isn't it? Having a partnership between, Found by Lottie and Nourish actually encompasses that idea that, working together is actually going to deliver the best care. It's not going to work in silos anymore. And people trying to do it by themselves, that's just not plausible at this stage. So I think that's incredibly powerful.
I think it's worth stressing that there are, as I said earlier on, integrations and there are integrations and partnerships. We both, Found by Lottie and Nourish, are super focused on our partnerships, and we're not just partnering with anyone. We're partnering with companies that we see are adding value to that care journey, but we're also seeing the need across the business of where there are gaps in the care sector where we need to look at additional partnerships. But ultimately, it comes down to one thing, that it's one of those, to make partnerships work, it's a two-way street. You need both parties fully invested and moving forward in a way that's that people are, that the customers are seeing benefit from, and not just seeing half-baked integrations, because unfortunately the care sector does have a number of integrations that are half-baked. They're not really solid integrations, and the integration journey that we're on with Found by Lottie and Nourish is so that we're genuinely investing in that over time, fully committed to that, and data flowing between the two systems and allowing that care journey to happen is something that we're super focused on.
Yeah, because it's catered to that individual, isn't it? Because the focus is that individual, the half-baked integrations are probably just the stopgap, the sort of that just try to simply connect the dots. Whereas, if you look a bit deeper and you work out why are we connecting the dots, that's the important factor. Just before we move on to some questions that from the audience, please ask away, guys. If you have any questions for Lee and Chris, please do ask away. I was wondering, Lee, do you have any stories of people at the forefront of a care journey for you? Do you have any examples?
Yeah, loads. One of the great projects that I'm working on at the moment is a documentary series called A Better Life. So we're landing episode 2 of that next week.
Nice.
We will be releasing a new film every month. And one of the real powerful pieces that's happening is just capturing those stories during that filming process. And so I've met a number of unbelievable characters over the last few months as we've been doing the filming. Yesterday, I was out in a home care setting and I've met just two amazing carers and going around the community, and the powerful relationships that they have. And one particular instance yesterday, just telling you one from yesterday morning, was someone that's the very young adult that needs a lot of support there, but they're extremely capable in other ways. They were at university, so it's a very young adult. The carer has worked with the individual, Louis, concerned for 3 years, and they're about to finish university. They're about to go back home. So just listening to their interactions yesterday, and the two of them knowing each other so well and being able to share stories of how during that whole journey they've had together, the great times they've had, the memories that they were sharing from that positive interaction, and the outcomes that have happened during their partnership as they were describing it. Two of the things that happened that was so powerful is that the carer supported Louis to learn to drive. So during literally helping him learn to drive around a university campus so that he could become more independent in his own life. And also another one, teaching him to cook and supporting him to be able to look after himself and sustain that life on their own. At the beginning of the process, Soren, the carer, was doing all of the cooking for him. But now there's the Louis was doing the cooking and Soren was just stepping back and being supportive where it was needed. And it's just witnessing that and seeing those outcomes happen up close is just been phenomenal. So, we've been capturing those stories at Nourish, and a better life and improving care for everyone every day is such an important part of what we're all doing within the care sector. And A Better Life was set out to show and shine a spotlight on great care teams, but also to share real positive stories from the sector rather than them being often the either overly glossy or the very negative pieces. So the next film is out next week, which is in an elderly care setting with high dementia and complex care. And in there, there are also some phenomenal stories of a care team with a driving ethos that's got such an emotional intelligence at their core that they're transforming lives and really, in fact, Sylvia, the example of the lollipop lady, was from that very film.
Oh, nice.
You'll hear about that story if you catch A Better Life when it's released next week.
How can people watch it, Lee? Where can people watch it?
So A Better Life is available on our website, but if you're on our newsletter list, there's an email alert that goes out to everyone on our newsletter list to share that it goes out every month. So if you're registering for our newsletter, which you can do on nourishcare.com, then you'll get a nudge on that. But also it's released on our YouTube channel. So obviously if you subscribe to our YouTube channel, each episode is alerted when it goes live.
That sounds amazing. I think what we'll do afterwards, Lee, is that in the follow-up email to all attendees and people that registered, I think what we'll do is that we'll send all those details so that people can register to the newsletter and subscribe to the YouTube channel and things like that. Because I think we started off this webinar completely zoomed out, looking at organizational levels, like what they can do, and then now we've got to the end, and you're focusing on that individual, that how care is actually delivered, and those incredibly amazing carers that are working every single day to do something so positive, flipping the sort of narrative on its head, which it needs to happen because there are amazing people in care doing incredible things. So thank you. Well, we have a question from the audience, and let's just have a quick look at that.
Or how quickly will real-time data be flowing between the systems?
Yeah.
So it's immediate. The moment that you create a profile and either send the information to Nourish or it automatically creates in Nourish, it's instantaneous. We're working with the team at Nourish now to make our integration completely sort of bilateral and two-way, so that you update any information in either system and it will update in each other's, which is a really nice and cool piece of tech we're working on. And then the next piece we'll be working on is how to integrate with Nourish from our financial tools as well. So really excited about that. But yeah, instantaneous.
There you go, instantaneous. Thank you for asking that question. If anyone has any other questions, ask away. Otherwise, I'll start wrapping up this wonderful webinar. I kind of just want to say thanks again to Lee and Chris for joining me today, because this has been a really exciting one. And I feel like this is touching on, you know, a lot of people would see this as a very niche topic, care collaborations, integrations, and delivering that care journey. But actually, as we sort of discovered today, that the human impact that can have is so extraordinary, and it can't be more important today than ever. So I just want to thank you both so much, Lee. Thank you for joining us, and Chris, wonderful to have you again. My next intro and outro might be so long that you won't get a word. Yeah. But if there are no other questions, brilliant. That means we've answered absolutely everything. Please look out for follow-up emails from us. We'll be talking a bit more about Nourish within them, and Found by Lottie, and how you can follow our journeys and get in contact if you're interested and things like that. And please look out for the next Found webinar. We're working with Sona, which is a workforce management solution. And that's on the 24th of July at 12 p.m. 12 p.m. Good, I read that right. I thought I almost got that mixed up then. 12 a.m. would be an odd time for a webinar, but I won't put it past myself and Chris hosting one day. Anything else to add? Anything else you would like to say, Lee and Chris, before we check out?
No.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much. Take care.